Hello everyone, it's Cerseion. How are you all doing today? With Pokemon Legends ZA coming out in the foreseeable future, I found it only fitting to look back at its ancient predecessor Legendsarceus. I haven't touched this game in ages, and I had the perfect idea on how to spice up a secondary playthrough of this once groundbreaking game. Today, I'm asking the question, can I beat Pokemon Legendsarceus with only Kantonian Pokemon? Let's go over the rules. I can only use Kantonian Pokemon in battle. I'll also only be allowed to catch and battle Kantonian Pokemon in the wild. No using items during trainer battles, and no glitches or exploits. Leave a comment letting me know how you think I'll fare against this self-imposed challenge. I'm confident I'll be able to win, but I'm curious to see just what party I'll be rolling with by the end of the game. With all that out of the way, let's get into the run. After being isekai to the world of Pokemon thanks to almighty Arceus, I wake up on a beach being greeted by a group of Pokemon and a rather perplexed individual who introduced himself as Professor Laventon. His accompanying Pokemon take the chance to skedaddle during his momentary diversion, causing the hapless professor to give chase. I then make my way up the beach and grab my newly transformed phone, which was also isekai'd by Arceus, before heading over towards Professor Laventon, who asked for my assistance. He gave me a surplus of Pokeballs, which I used to catch Cyndaquil, Oshawott, and Rowlet. Although I made that process sound incredibly easy, apparently what I just did was so astounding that Professor Laventon decides to escort me to the nearby village in hopes that I could help him complete his work in progress, the world's first Pokédex. I elect to give Laventon the bad news about my involvement in his passion project after being brought to the village, where I marched down the street to be gawked at by all the villagers. We pause by the bridge where Professor Laventon remembers some errands he's supposed to run before telling me to head over to the village canteen called the Wallflower. However, the head chef there calls me sus and tells me to scram before giving me the cold shoulder. I'm then approached by one of the villagers who comments on my flimsy fashion, who Laventon unintentionally introduces as Akari. She expressed some skeptical sass concerning Laventon appointing me to aid his Pokédex project, but gets shut down by Captain Selene, who was willing to feed and house me in exchange for my cooperation. She decides to put my abilities to test the following day, as Laventon, Akari, and I sit down to snack on some potato mochi, where Laventon lets Akari know about my astounding achievement of catching 3 entire Pokemon on my own. He expresses his complete confidence in my capabilities before Captain Selene showed me to my quarters, telling me if I failed my mission tomorrow, I'd be thrown to the wilds. With that lovely thought in the back of my mind, I head off to sleep where I can be sure that my situation couldn't possibly get any worse. I meet up with Akari the following morning before we head off to the Galaxy Hall to get my assignment from Captain Selene. She keeps my mission brief, stating I was to catch a Bidoof, Starly, and Shinx within the Obsidian Fieldlands, before handing me a satchel to help carry some supplies in and asking Akari to accompany me in case things go south. Professor Laventon decides as a professor of Pokemon to aid my trial by allowing me to take one of his Pokemon. Since none of these Pokemon are from Kanto, I can't use any of them, so I just use Cyndaquil because he's my favorite of the bunch. Professor Laventon then hands me some Pokeballs he recently crafted before Akari and I make our way towards the front gate of Jubilife Village. There we get greeted by a man from the Ginkgo Guild named Volo, who asks if I was willing to give him a brief battle. I accept Volo's request, and our short spat is concluded after a couple of Cyndaquil's consecutive quick attacks shatter the tightly Togepi. Volo gives me a few potions as a reward before Akari and I make our way to the Obsidian Fieldlands, being tailed by perturbed Professor Laventon, who told us Captain Selene was holding him responsible should we come into any danger. Akari and I begin my trial without further delay as I instantly catch the first Bidoof I come across by beating it directly in the face with the Pokeball. Next up is Starly, which I stealthily sneak behind in order to literally catch it by surprise. Last on the docket is Shinx, which I'm forced to encounter but end up just slinging a Pokeball in order to avoid any actual combat with my non-Kantonian Pokemon. After being amazed by my brilliant ball throwing skills, Akari and I walk over to Professor Laventon to give him the good news, who decides to take a photograph to commemorate the special occasion. We all head back to Jubilife Village, where upon telling Captain Selene I completed my mission, she awards me with the Survey Corps uniform and tells me to go put it on before reporting back to meet with the commander. I swiftly slide into my new apparel and make my way back to the Galaxy Hall, where Captain Selene finishes my fit by gifting me a cap before I went to report to the commander. When I entered the commander's office, he stated that his name was Komodo before ordering me to face him in combat. After a jarring judo throw into an adjacent wall, Commander Komodo commented on my ample vigor before warning me that the Pokemon outside Jubilife Village are terrifying creatures that'll eat me alive if I'm not careful. With that, he makes me an official member of the Galaxy Expedition team, and Captain Celine briefs me on needing to perform dutifully in the field if I wish to climb the ranks, before giving me the recipe to craft Pokeballs and a small sum of 3,000 Pokecoin. Akari brings me over to the craftworks where I'm able to use materials I find outside Jubilee Village to craft items such as Pokeballs and potions. Professor Lavington comes over to admire my handiwork before handing me a spiral-bound Pokédex and heading off for the Fieldlands. With all the tutorials completed, I make my way for the front gate and can finally begin this challenge. Professor Lavington gave me the rundown on research tasks upon arriving back at the Fieldlands, as Akari then masterfully demonstrated how to dodge and avoid enemy attacks. I then began my search for my first Cantonian Pokemon, stumbling across a Ponyta which I baited with a Cherry Berry before sneaking up to catch the Flaming Full with a surprise strike. I named my Ponyta Artax and began battling the other Ponyta in the area before launching her at nearby rocks and trees to gain crafting materials and experience points. Sadly, Professor Lavington informed me that I hadn't gained enough research points to increase my rank quite yet, so I went back to and from Jubilee Village to refresh the spawns of the Fieldlands. Fortunately, I was able to encounter some Eevee on my return trip, who I fed and captured by surprise. This earned me enough research points to rank up, so we all head back to Jubilee Village, where Captain Celine awards me with my first star and the recipes for heavy balls and revives. Lavington, Akari, and I partake in some potato mochi afterwards, and once morning comes around, Akari asks me to meet her at the battlegrounds. There she laments that her partner Pikachu refuses to listen to her before declaring me to a battle so she can learn how to fight more effectively. I take the chance to have one of my Eevees gain some passive research points by spamming Quick Attack, who manages to pull through even though they came shockingly close to fainting. Akari thanked me for my assistance before we were approached by the village battlemaster Zisu, who explained the concept of style moves to me. Strong style strengthens your attack at the cost of your speed, and agile style weakens your attack but hastens your moves. As I return to the Obsidian Fieldlands once more, I get jump scared by Volo before making my way towards the bridge where I meet Mai, one of the Diamond Clan's many wardens. She asks if I'm confident in my battle prowess and sends in her Munchlax to see what I'm made of. I use this opportunity to once again spam Quick Attack with Eevee, who goes down after a brief back and forth. I then send in my second Eevee to finish the fight, much to my satisfaction, and after healing my Pokemon, she tasks me with confronting an Alpha Pokemon that's been causing a ruckus at Deer Track Heights just up the trail. She attempted to regale me with how the Deer Track Heights Protector was a Pokemon blessed by Almighty Sinnoh, but I was far more psyched about all the Kanto Pokemon I could catch now that I had access to this side of the Fieldlands. By heading counterclockwise around this portion of the map, I'm able to snag an Abra by baiting it with a berry before catching it with a surprise strike. I then encounter a Zubat, which I'm able to catch after one of my Eevees roughs it up with their Quick Attack. I hike a bit further up the trail where I'm able to catch a Paris before I let Artax loose to effortlessly ember down their population for some research and experience points. After that, I'm able to encounter a Geodude a stone's toss away, which I'm able to catch with little resistance before making my way to Deer Track Heights where Mai was awaiting my arrival. Professor Lavington sprints his way over to observe the alpha in question, which turned out to be a Kricketune. Its hilarious battle cry aside, it only takes Artax 2 embers to cook the musical menace, who flees the scene before we're greeted by the Deer Track Protector, Weirdeer, who seemed to take a liking to me. As it saunters off, Akari swings by to set up a base camp here under the orders of Captain Celine. Mai decides to leave us to our work, promising to give me a proper reward for my assistance in the near future. After Professor Lavington, Akari, and I set up the secondary base camp, we head over to the Wallflower to fill up on some potato mochi, where Benny informs us that some members of the expedition team were mauled by a frenzied Kleavor. Professor Lavington expressed his confidence that I'd be able to handle the situation, much to Akari's sly skepticism, before we continued feasting the night away. The following morning, Akari tells me to head to Commander Commodore's office on the double, but before we were able to head over there, we were subjected to 2 strangers arguing over which of them believed in the true Sinnoh. Akari apologized for their blasphemous bickering, stating they were both leaders of their respective clans, Irida the Pearl Clan and Adaman the Diamond Clan. I then go to meet with Commander Commodore, where I met with the lunatic leaders who waste their breath on introductions I'm already aware of. Commander Commodore suggests that I be the one to deal with the Kleavor issue as a neutral party, which Adaman agrees to immediately, much to Irida's dismay. I'm ordered to find a solution to Kleavor's frenzy, with the caveat being to not screw up and ruin a potential alliance between the Galaxy team and other clans. I go downstairs to get my mission briefing from Captain Celine, who explains Kleavor is one of the Pearl Clan's noble Pokemon, and members often leave their offerings to it near its location. We're then interrupted by Mai and Adaman, who interprets my arrival through the space-time rift as a blessing blessing from Sinnoh. Adamant then asks me to quell Kleavor's frenzy, explaining that the Pearl Clan has too much pride to accept or ask for any help in the matter. Mai informs me that Kleavor is located at the Grand Tree Arena and guarded by a genius named Lian who can tell me more about Kleavor upon my arrival. Instead of immediately making my way towards Lian, I choose to grind my Pokemon up and gain some more research points, which I'm glad I did because I ran into a Pikachu on my little excursion. Pikachu is one of the Obsidian Fieldlands' rarest spawns, and I ended up catching it by baiting it with a berry before nailing it with a surprise strike. While I was on my grind, my Abra gained enough experience points to level up and evolve into Kadabra. I rounded things off by giving all the Pokemon in my party nicknames before making my way to the Grand Tree Arena, briefly stopping by the forest stream so I could procure a Psyduck. I then met the prodigy Lian, who quickly deduced I was here to investigate Kleavor and attempted to turn me away, stating it was far too dangerous to approach after being struck with Sinnoh's divine might. However, my persistence struck a chord within Lian, who told me he's under orders from Irida to not let anyone near their forest lord and resorts to sending out his gruesome Goomy to halt my investigation. I sent out Liz the Zubat to get some research points by spamming Gust, but a normal style bubble from Goomy, followed by a strong style bubble, is enough to take her out. In response, I send out Bentley the Kadabra, whose confusion is more than enough to splatter Lian's Goomy all over the forest floor. Defeated, Lian still attempts to dissuade me from pursuing Kleavor, stating how even his finest offerings of its favorite foods can't get through to it. Irida then arrives on the scene, stating that the Pearl Clan must swallow its pride if they want a chance of helping their forest lord and avoiding conflict with both the Diamond Clan and Galaxy Team. Lian puts his stubbornness aside and asks if I could truly find a way to quell Kleavor's rampage, and with my assurance, he and Irida go to gather their noble's favorite foods in the hopes their offering will stall Kleavor long enough for me to find a solution to its frenzy. Now I could go back and report this to base camp, or I could travel further up the trail to catch a Scyther before heading into Orboro Tunnel to catch a few Machop. I can then break down this barrier blocking the exit and continue towards the coastline to bait in a Magikarp with some berries before catching it without any issue. With that, I return to base camp and report my findings to Professor Laventon, who decides to mull over the information in his lab. He then tells me I've earned more than enough research points to increase my rank before taking me to his lab, where he comes up with the ingenious idea to take Kleavor's favorite foods and throw them directly at its frenzied face. Before going to the Grand Tree Arena to inform the Pearl Clan of this flawless strategy, I head over to Captain Celine to receive my secondary star and receive the recipes for feather balls and super potions as a neat gift for my expeditious efforts. I make some quick changes to my party before meeting Mai by the front gate, who took me over to the base camp at Deer Track Heights. Once there, she and Adamant taught me how to tame Weirdeer with its favorite flute solo, who gave me the mind plate hoping for an encore. Now that I can ride atop Weirdeer, I have a lot more time on my Hisuian hands that's no longer being spent sprinting around everywhere on foot. I use that free time to do a massive amount of my Pokemon's research tasks, mostly the ones that award double points indicated by a big red arrow. Such tasks include catching multiple copies of certain Pokemon, feeding certain Pokemon, defeating certain Pokemon with super effective moves, and watching certain Pokemon use specific moves, the most infuriating of these being Magikarp's 100 splashes. Before I go to throw down with Kleavor, I'd like to show y'all the party I'm currently working with. We've got Lamarce the Kadabra, Farah the Scyther, Bruno the Machop, Akira the Pikachu, Dwayne the Geodude, and Furos the Magikarp. With my party's introductions adjourned, I walk up to Lian and tell him about my plan to pummel Kleavor with its favorite foods until it's pacified, which is met by complete disgust from Irida, who decides to fight me for my sacrilege. In the end, her Glaceon proves to be no match for Bruno, who Glacie offs it with 2 consecutive uses of Rock Smash. Having been bested, Irida agrees to fix up some soothing bombs for Kleavor, after which Lian prepares a speech to draw the frenzied Forest Lord in. Kleavor's fight is incredibly simple since all of its attacks are blatantly telegraphed. All you need to do is dodge when you see Kleavor's eyes flash and avoid its whirlwind swing, which it charges for way too long. Unfortunately, since Kleavor is a non-Cantonian native, I can't send in my team to battle it, but once my muscle memory kicks in, I'm able to effortlessly roll through most of Kleavor's attacks and toss my final bomb, putting an end to the noble Mantis's madness. It gives me the insect plate as thanks for my assistance before scurrying off into the woods. Irida and Lian then begin to ponder as to why their forest noble was struck by Sinnoh's almighty power and whether or not my interference is an affront to their divine will. Regardless, with my mission accomplished, I head back to Professor Laventon at base camp, who tallies up my research points, informing me I've yet again gained enough to increase my rank before telling me I should report my success concerning Kleavor to Commander Commodore. After returning to Jubilee Village, I have a quick conversation with Volo regarding my plates before heading to Commander Commodore's office, who thanked me for my admirable assistance to the people of Hisui, warning me that there are reports of other noble Pokemon going berserk across the region. I'm then dismissed and head over to the Wallflower to chow down on some potato mochi with Laventon and Akari, who gives me the recipe for smoke bombs before we continue feasting the night away. The next day, I'm approached by Arezi, one of the Diamond Clan's wardens and chief hairdresser, who's here to speak to Commander Commodore about an urgent matter. I decide to go around Jubilee Village doing a few side quests, selling some goods to the Ginkgo Guild, and teaching a few of my Pokemon some new moves before reporting to Commander Commodore, who's currently talking to Arezi about an Ursaluna that's currently rampaging in the Crimson Mirelands. I'm ordered to go investigate the matter and get sent to Captain Celine for further briefing. She informs me that I'll find Ursaluna's warden within the Salacian ruins of the Crimson Mirelands, and whilst I'm here, Captain Celine grants me my 3rd star along with the recipe for Great Balls. Before leaving the Galaxy Hall, I swing by Professor Laventon's lab to nab the mission for a peculiar ponytail posted on his chalkboard and make my way to the front gate where Akari was itching to have another battle. She leads with Mime Jr., who I use as a practice dummy for Lamarche to spam Psycho Cut on, and after it goes down, Akari sends in her partner Pikachu, who quickly picks off Lamarche's remaining HP. I then bring Bruno out to batter Akari's ace with a bulldoze, netting me the win. Akari gives me the recipe for stealth sprays for winning and makes her way towards the Mirelands base camp, but instead of following in her footsteps, I head back towards the Obsidian Fieldlands. With Kleavor Quelling, not only will random alpha Pokemon begin appearing, but space-time distortions will also begin spawning around the map at random intervals. While waiting for one of these space-time distortions to appear, I catch a peculiar ponytail, which is a guaranteed shiny that I named Shadowfax and added to my entourage. I then began to take out some Golbat, which net me enough experience points to evolve Magikarp into Gyarados, Geodude into Graveler, Machop into Machoke, an Alpha Parasite found into Parasect, and Zubat into Golbat. All this waiting and grinding took so long that I eventually managed to run into a full-odd shiny Golbat, which I caught with a swift surprise strike. Finally, a space-time distortion spawned in and I rode over to it atop Weirdeer post-haste. What I'm looking for in these distortions are all the Kanto Pokemon I can catch sooner than I should, those being Onix, Lickitung, Haunter, and Gengar. I'm also searching for the evolution items necessary to evolve a lot of my Pokemon. Luckily, I could get the evolution stones by breaking certain colored rocks around the map, but the only hopes I had for getting link cords came from nabbing them from within the space-time distortions. One of these distortions spawned on the western side of the Fieldlands, where I was able to catch a Mr. Mime I baited with a berry after it had disappeared. I then decided to go back to base camp, where Professor Laventon told me I had managed to gain enough research points to increase my rank before heading to Jubilee Village to see if there was any other way to obtain some link cords. Unfortunately, the only other option available to me was the merit exchange, which would take longer than just swiping them from the distortions. Before going back to the Fieldlands to claim these evolutionary components, I presented myself to Captain Celine, who awarded me my 4th star and gave me the recipes for Legend Balls and Hyper Potions. I'm luckily able to eventually procure the 2 link cables I required to get my new evolutions after nearly 5 hours of searching, during which I was able to not only find the shiny Zubat I caught after taking out its buddies, but also a shiny Scyther, which I managed to snag shortly after my Psyduck sent it to sleep. With all the necessary evolution items in hand, I can now evolve an Eevee into Flareon with a Fire Stone, another Eevee into Vaporeon with a Water Stone, a 3rd Eevee into Jolteon with a Thunderstone, Akira the Pikachu into Raichu with a 2nd Thunderstone, Lamarche the Kadabra into Alakazam with a Link Cable, Bruno the Machoke into Machamp with a 2nd Link Cable, Gaia the Alpha Graveler into Golem with my final Link Cable, and finally Psyduck into Golduck after feeding it enough XP candies to evolve. With no more Cantonian Pokemon left for me to obtain in the Obsidian Fieldlands at the moment, let me quickly show y'all my current party before trekking off to the Mirelands. We got Shadowfax the shiny Ponyta, Anakin the Alpha Gyarados, Bruno the Machamp, Lamarche the Alakazam, Gaia the Alpha Golem, and Akira the Raichu. With introductions out of the way, let's head over to the new area. Upon arriving at the Crimson Mirelands, Professor Lavington lets me know of the plethora of poisonous Pokemon residing here before Akari points me in the direction of the Celestion ruins, where I meet Warden Kalaba of the Pearl Clan. She notices my Celestica flute and determines that I must be the one responsible for quelling Kleavor's frenzy. She's not a big fan of me pummeling her clan's forest lord with its favorite foods and tells me to take a hike. Before I could do just that, I'm accosted by Volo, who's revved up for a rematch with yours truly. He leads with his Togepi, who I crack wide open with 2 confusions from the marsh. He then sends out Gibbo, but a dazzling gleam guarantees the tiny dragon's demise. After our battle, Volo tells me Warden Kalaba is upset because a fragment of the Celestion Ruins wall was recently stolen before asking if I was willing to go retrieve it from a camp the trio of thieves set up nearby. As I'm investigating the abandoned campsite, I'm confronted by the trio of bandits who present themselves as Charm the eldest sister, Coin the youngest sister, and Clover the middle sister. They all strike a pose announcing they're the Misfortune sisters before Coin decides to test her luck by battling me. Unfortunately for Coin, her Toxicroak gets flipped into an early grave thanks to Gaia's Bulldoze, after which Coin hands me the stolen wall fragment before she and her sisters turn tail and run for the hills. I deliver the wall fragment to Warden Kalaba, who's stunned by my generosity and determination to end Ursaluna's rampage. After placing the wall fragment back in its proper place and reflecting on a message left by Almighty Sinnoh, Warden Kalaba informs me that Ursaluna will probably return to normal if we can manage to give it some medicine. Of course, Ursaluna will have to be subdued in battle before we can do that, which Warden Kalaba is relying on me to accomplish at the Sludge Mound. On my way there, I take a brief detour in order to catch both a Tangela and Ghastly, adding their entries to my ongoing Kanto decks. When I arrive at the Sludge Mound, Warden Kalaba pulls out her Celestica flute and plays a tune that's able to summon forth the rampaging Ursaluna. After a brief back and forth between Bruno and the Berserk Bear, we successfully manage to tucker Ursaluna out to the point where Warden Kalaba is able to administer some Toxicon, which tames the once manic Major. With Ursaluna's uproar suppressed, Warden Kalaba and I both come to the conclusion that its frenzy was nothing like the affliction that made Kleavor go bug wild. She thanks me for my assistance nonetheless and teaches me how to summon Ursaluna with my Celestica flute, who gives me the Earth Plate as a token of gratitude. I'm then told by Warden Kalaba to report what transpired here to Commander Komodo, which I decide to delay before heading further up the Mirelands so I can catch some of the roaming Rhyhorn. While I was on this slight detour, space-time distortion spawned in where I was able to catch a Porygon before heading back to base camp, where I was told by Professor Lavington that I had yet again gained the research points needed to increase my rank. Upon returning to Jubilee Village, I report to Captain Celine to do just that, receiving my 5th star and obtaining the recipe for wing bombs. I then head straight upstairs to Commander Komodo's office and listen to a conversation he's having with Benny and Adaman about Arezu knowingly hiding the fact that their noble of the Mirelands, Lilligant, is currently out of control. They all turn to me for a solution, and I suggest using my recently acquired Ursaluna to search for Arezu, which Commander Komodo ultimately tasks me with doing. Before heading back to the Mirelands, I take a hike back to the Obsidian Fieldlands in order to catch the Alpha Rapidash now that my catching level was high enough. While I was running around the Fieldlands to check all the other Pokespawns, I managed to run into a full-odd shiny Kricketot, which I immediately snagged without a second thought. It's not going to be used in any capacity and won't have any effect on my challenge, considering I'm already at the 5th star rank, which is the minimum rank needed to complete the story. Speaking of story, I head back to the Crimson Mirelands and attempt to continue it, but get sidetracked when I run into a shiny Ghastly less than a minute after my arrival. After catching it, my jaw nearly hit the floor as I found out she had an amazing nature, so I nicknamed her Spectre and spent about an hour training her up off of some local parasects. Eventually, Spectre gained enough experience points to evolve into Haunter, which I evolved again immediately afterwards into a Gengar with the use of a link cord. During Spectre's training, another space-time distortion spawned in where I was able to catch a Snorlax, thus obtaining all the Kanto Pokemon available to me at this point in the game. I then rode atop Ursaluna to track down Arezu, who sprained her ankle attempting to gather the ingredients required to make some soothing bombs for Lilligant. Warden Kalaba then arrives and apologizes to Arezu for considering her a whelp before Adaman then joins the scene, accepting that he's to blame for everything being so out of hand here. He then takes Arezu's bombs and tells me to head to the Brave Arena once I'm ready to face Lilligant. Everyone meets up at the base of the Brave Arena to give me some survival tips before I march up the steps to tango with the Lady of the Ridge, Lilligant. Her fight is pretty simple, just count the number of musical notes she sings into existence and dodge that number of incoming attacks. As the battle progresses, the color of her notes will change, indicating an energy attack that you'll need to roll into to avoid taking damage. Just like Kleavor, I'm unable to send in my Pokemon to battle the non-Cantonian native, which hardly matters as I throw my final bomb, quelling Lilligant's rampage in a matter of minutes. The pirouetting princess gives me the meadow plate as a token of her thanks before Adaman, Arezu, and Warden Kalaba come over to thank me for all my hard work. Adaman and Warden Kalaba then give Arezu a pep talk about not needing to do everything by herself and to work alongside her people and Pokemon to grow ever stronger. I then return to Jubilife Village to report the success of my mission to Commander Kamado, who begins to wonder whether or not I have something to do with these noble Pokemon going berserk, seeing as the causes for both instances came from the space-time rift. I then meet up with Professor Laventon and Akari at the Wallflower, where we yet again stuff our faces full of piping hot potato mochi and receive the recipe for scatterbangs from Akari. The next morning, I wake up to find out that Arezu has decided to be a part-time hairdresser for the village before Commander Kamado commandeers the conversation and drags me down to Prelude Beach. Once there, we meet with a group of people who arrived looking to settle in Jubilife Village, largely thanks to my continuous contributions within the region. After they depart for the village, I'm asked by Commander Kamado if I truly love Pokemon, who finds my answer troubling considering a lot of his comrades were gravely injured by the terrifying creatures. Akari then swings by to tell Commander Kamado that Irida has arrived, as Kamado and I then depart to meet her at his office. Once there, I get a rundown of the tragedy that befell the prior lord of the Cobalt Coastlands. Worse yet, there are reports of shadowy figures occupying the island it once called home that are attacking members of the Security and Supply Corps. Commander Kamado orders me to investigate these reports, and I'm given the all-clear from Captain Celine thanks to my high ranking. Professor Laventon can hardly contain his excitement when we arrive at the Coastlands before reminding me of my mission's utmost importance. He then tells me that two wardens have made their home here, those being Palina of the Pearl Clan and Iscan of the Diamond Clan. I begin heading up the trail where I find Irida playing a beautiful melody on her Celestica flute. After concluding her composition, Irida states that she's gonna battle me with everything she's got before sending out her Glaceon and accompanying Eevee. I respond by sending out Shadowfax, who easily melts the Frosty evolution with Mystic Fire. Irida's Eevee attempts to avenge his Arctic comrade but falls just as easily, winning me the battle. In light of her crushing defeat, Irida decides to come clean, saying how she desperately tries to not look weak in the faces of Adaman and Commander Kamado. She then tells me that Warden Palina is currently bereft of a noble and refuses to raise another Pokemon to that stature, leading to rumors spreading about how she's unfit to be called a warden. Irida can't stand listening to these nasty falsities regarding her friend, so being the only other person she can trust, Irida asks me to aid Paulina in raising the Prior Lord's offspring into a mighty noble. Before I'm even able to reach the base of the cliff she's standing atop, a space-time distortion appears where I'm able to catch a Magnemite, Magneton, and Rhydon before it dissipates. As I hike up the hill, I encounter a Vulpix, which I capture with a surprise strike after baiting it with a berry. I then have to decide whether or not to catch a Hisui and Growlithe, ultimately electing not to as it's technically a regional variant and not a true Cantonian native. I then go to the peak of the cliff to meet Paulina, who is well aware of my noble quelling escapades. She then tells me how the previous lord of the coastland sacrificed itself to save its kin from being swallowed by the sea. Its child is the meek runt sitting before me, which Paulina refuses to force into lordship due to its severe mental trauma. After concluding her impassioned tirade, Paulina asks why I'm here in the coastlands and informs me I'll need the aid of Basque Legion if I wish to surf Hisui seas over the Five-Spit Island. She points me towards the tent on the other side of the coastlands where Iscan can help me summon the mighty beast. The Diamond Clan's warden sheepishly greets me on my arrival and informs me if I want to receive Basque Legion's aid in going to Firespit Island, then I'll need to catch a Dusclops in order to help prepare some of its favorite food. And it's at this point where I must say with a heavy heart that no, I cannot beat Pokemon Legends Arceus with only Cantonian Pokemon. There's just no way past this point without catching a Dusclops. But I've already come this far, so let's continue the game with this one non-Cantonian Pokemon aside. I reluctantly catch the Cycloptic Spectre, which causes it to start raining, a clear sign that Almighty Arceus weeps for my misfortune. I then dejectedly drag Dusclops over to Eastcan and have it use Dark Pulse on a slab of meat, creating some spectral steak. We bring the macabre meat down to the seashore where Paulina joins us for the summoning of Basque Legion. A 2 on Eastcan's flute brings the fish to shore where I toss it to spectral state before learning the melody required to summon Basque Legion to my aid wherever I may be. The phantasmal fish gives me the splash plate before we're accosted by the Misfortune Sisters who steal Paulina's Growlithe thanks to Charm's Gengar. They state how they plan on using Growlithe's power for their own gain and tail it to Firespit Island where they hope to turn the ardent puppy into a noble. Paulina begs for my help and Iscan decides to tag along so she can stay here and keep her other Growlithe safe from harm. Before setting sail, I make sure to banish Dusclops to the Distortion World where it belongs and make my way towards Firespit Island atop Basque Legion. Along my way, I'm able to catch a truckload of Tentacool and Tentacruel, which net me enough XP to evolve Shadowfax into Rapidash. Upon arriving at Firespit Island, I immediately ran up the base of the volcano in order to catch myself a Magmar. Before confronting the trio of thieves, let's quickly go over my current party. We have Spectre the Shiny Gengar, Bruno the Machamp, Shadowfax the Shiny Rapidash, Gaia the Alpha Golem, the Marsh the Alakazam, and Anakin the Alpha Gyarados. I head to the Volcano Summit to face the Misfortune Sisters, the first of which is Clover, who decided an active volcano was the perfect place to bring out her Abomasnow. Needless to say, Shadowfax easily incinerates it with a single flame wheel, leading to a battle with the next Misfortune Sister, Coin. Her Toxicroak manages to survive Shadowfax's flame wheel and retaliates with an agile-style Mud Bomb, followed by a consecutive Mud Bomb, which sends Shadowfax packing. I send in the March to avenge my mighty mare, whose confusion was more than enough to take Toxicroak out. Last up is Charm, and because these battles are back-to-back, I'm forced to send in Gaia, who fails to flinch or KO Charm's Rhydon with Iron Head, and gets shattered by an agile-style and consecutive strong-style Bulldoze. I sent in Spectre to avenge my fallen ally and obliterated Charm's Rhydon with an Energy Ball. She then attempted to mirror match me with her own Gengar, but Spectre proved superior and slammed it with a Shadow Ball, netting me the victory. Before the trio of sisters had a chance at another go-round, they're confronted by the child of the late noble, who upon seeing its brother in peril, finds the courage to evolve into Arcanine. Unfortunately, all is not well as Coin points out a tear forming in the sky which shoots out a bolt of power, sending the Arcanine into a state of frenzy. The Misfortune Sisters flee upon seeing the consequences of their actions as Paulina, Eastcan, and I retreat shortly thereafter. Paulina accepts responsibility for the Coastlands' new noble, with Irda arriving shortly afterwards and aids in the creation of some soothing bombs. I then make my way back to the Volcano Summit and prepare to face the newly crowned noble, Arcanine. Each fight starts similarly to Kleavor's, with its eyes flashing whenever it's about to attack, in which it will always charge in a straightforward line. Every once in a while, Arcanine will charge away from me and start charging up a super attack, which you can cancel by throwing multiple bombs at its frenzied face. At half health, Arcanine will create a ring of fire in the middle of the arena in an attempt to constrict your movements, but keep up the pressure and this hot dog will be cooked in no time. With its frenzy successfully suppressed, Arcanine gave me the flame play as thanks for my endeavors within the Coastlands before Paulina gives a tearful goodbye to her dog, which must stay here to do its duty. Before Eastcan and Paulina leave, she makes me promise to look after Irda, who's currently sulking over the fact she couldn't help quell Arcanine's rampage. Seeing me thrive in my element, however, has pushed her to strive to become stronger as she vows to battle me again after she's broadened her perspective alongside her partner. Before heading back to Jubilee Village, I stick around the Coastlands and do a ton of research tasks, such as evolving all the Tentacool I caught into Tentacruel, and being a genuine nuisance to the island's Poke population, culminating in using a Firestone to evolve one of my Vulpix into Ninetales. Suffice to say, when I return to base camp, Professor Laventon tells me I'm able to increase my rank before we depart for Jubilee Village. I head straight over to Captain Celine upon my return and receive my 6 stars, as well as the recipes for Ultra Balls and Max Potions as a reward for my continuous contributions to the Galaxy team. I then head up to Commander Commodore's office to report the success of yet another mission, who heralds his hopes that my efforts may one day lead to the closure of the space-time rift. Akari Laventon and I then gorge ourselves on Benny's potato mochi until nightfall, and when morning swings around, I'm told by a totally inconspicuous stranger to report to Commander Commodore for my next assignment. When I get there, he's already talking to Adamant about needing to quell the frenzy of Electrode, Lord of the Coronet Highlands. Before we can discuss my mission's details any further, our conversation gets interrupted by the Highlands Warden Melly, who's sad to find that Adamant had left him out of the loop with matters concerning his noble. I'm given the orders to quell Electrode's rampage despite Melly's protests before Adamant decides to challenge me to a battle to see what I'm made of. Shadowfax makes short work of his Leafeon Eevee combo with Flame Wheel and Swift, after which Adamant and Melly depart for the Coronet Highlands. I'm then called in to meet with Captain Celine, who clears me to venture into the Highlands before stating I'll need the aid of a particular person stationed at the training grounds to successfully survey the new area. When I get there, I'm greeted by Irda, who introduces me to her fellow clan member Ingo, who just like me fell from the space-time rift. She hopes that us traveling together will help remedy his amnesia before wishing us luck and wandering off. Instead of going directly to the new area, I decided to grind up merit points in case I needed them in the near future, which I'm glad I did because I was able to catch this absurdly powerful Alpha Scyther along the way. Sadly, Shadowfax would be the Pokemon sent to the pastures to make room for Mithra to join the team, so I said my goodbyes before making my way for the Coronet Highlands. Professor Laventon was there to greet me when I arrived and gave me some tidbits about the kind of Pokemon I'll be seeing here. I then meet up with Ingo further up the trail, who gets into some banter with a disgruntled Melly before guiding me through the winding wayward cave. It's noticeably darker thanks to Melly's sabotage, and upon exiting the cave, Ingo gives me the rundown on how he was found by the Pearl Clan upon arriving in Hisui and eventually became one of the Highlands Wardens. We try to press on, only to be accosted by Melly, who demands a battle before we can continue. Mikar starts off strong with an aerial ace, only to nearly get taken out by Skuntank's flamethrower. I retaliate with a strong style aerial ace, winning me the battle and sending Melly off in a huff. Ingo and I continue onwards until we come to a stop at a cliff blocking the way forward, where Ingo asks if I would indulge him in a quick battle. His first Pokemon is Machoke, which gets one-shot by Mithra's aerial ace after setting up his sword stance the prior turn. Ingo then tosses Tangela in, who tries to halt my sweep with Stun Spore before being cut down by another aerial ace. Last up for Ingo is Gliscor, who puts Mithra down with a quick attack aerial ace combo. I bring Bruno out to get my revenge, who sends Ingo's Gliscor flying with a quad-effective Ice Punch. With our battle concluded, Ingo pulls out his Celestica flute and plays the tune required to summon forth Sneasler. I then play the same ditty on my own flute to attune Sneasler to my own melody and summon it at a moment's notice. The lanky creature hands me the Toxic Plate before Ingo and I go our separate ways, and I can begin using Sneasler to scale the Highlands' rocky terrain. This allows me to catch an Electabuzz at the peak of the mountain before catching a Clefairy at the fabled spring once nighttime swings around. Just like with Hisui and Growlithe, I'm electing not to catch Hisui and Voltorb due to its non-Cantonian variation, so I head towards the Sacred Plaza in an attempt to complete my mission and quell Electrode's frenzy. Melly's really cruising for a bruising, however, and halts my endeavors until we've had a rematch, where he sends out his Skuntank, Skorupi, and Zubat all at the same time. I lead with Gaia and send Melly's Skuntank into an early grave with 2 uses of Bulldose, but get taken out shortly afterwards due to Zubat and Skorupi's tag team assault whittling down her HP. Not wanting to deal with Melly's Tauros pad any longer, I let Lamarche loose to blast his poisonous pair away with Psychic, thus ending our little skirmish. Melly still tries to delay the inevitable and claims to not know what his noble's favorite foods are, but Adamant comes in and tells him in no uncertain terms to cut the crapper and help make some soothing bombs before Electrode hurts someone. Melly reluctantly relents and Electrode's bombs are prepared as I'm sent in to get the Lord of the Hollow under control. Electrode's battle is a war of absolute attrition, as it will send some homing bolts of electricity to chase you, which you'll need to outrun while bobbing and weaving through a bombardment of Voltorb. Eventually Electrode will charge a super attack you'll need to avoid before taking some time to recharge, which is when you need to pepper it with your bombs. Our launch stays the same at half health, with the addition of a faster homing attack and Electrode super move continuously gravitating towards your current position. The battle comes close, but I eventually throw enough bombs to pacify the enraged Apricorn. I receive the Zap Plate for my endeavors as Ingo swings by to give everyone a speech about how we all need to work together and strive to make each other stronger with every passing day. Everyone then says their goodbyes, giving me the freedom to do as I please. I end up going around and doing some of my Pokemon's research tasks while catching some duplicate Pokemon in case I wanted to swap my team around. While doing this, I managed to encounter a shiny Haunter, which I took as a sign I should pass things up before swiftly catching it. I made sure to evolve one of my Clefairy into a Clefable with a Moonstone before speaking to Professor Laventon, who unsurprisingly told me I had yet again gained enough research points to increase my rank. When we return to Jubilife Village, I report directly to Captain Celine and receive my 7th star, allowing me to control any Pokemon regardless of their level, as well as the recipe for Gigaton Balls. I then head to Commander Commodore's office to report my mission success, who ponders on Melly's statement that these frenzies are a test from Sinnoh. He holds his theories for now before telling me to head to the Wallflower for some food and rest. There, Professor Laventon and Akari talk about all the good I've done since I got here and merrily state that I'm a member of their community no matter what anyone else has to say. I wake up the following morning to find Adamant and Irida on my doorstep as the 3 of us head to Commander Commodore's office per his request. With 4 of the nobles' frenzies quelled, it's now time to head out to the Alabaster Icelands to pacify the final Lord Avalugg. We all agree to meet up there, but before leaving, I'm challenged to a rematch by Akari. She sends out Mr. Mime as I lead with Anakin, who slams it with an Iron Head, immediately taking it out. Akari then brings out her partner Pikachu, who avenges Mr. Mime's demise with an agile style and consecutive use of Thunderbolt. I toss out Gaia and blitz Akari's Pikachu with Bulldoze, leading to her sending out her final Pokemon, Staravia. The Brave Bird gets off a Brave Bird before Gaia buries it under a rock slide, winning me the battle. Satisfied by our little skirmish, Akari and Professor Laventon elect to go on ahead as I make a quick stop by the Obsidian Fieldlands in order to catch the final Cantonian Pokemon available to me, that being Chansey. With no new Kanto Pokemon left for me to catch, I made my way for the Alabaster Icelands and meet Professor Laventon, who's currently freezing his Arky ass off. Irida and Adamant arrive shortly afterwards and have a brief back and forth regarding their assumed identity of Almighty Sinnoh before Irida states we'll have to meet with with her teacher Garrick to learn more about the situation concerning Avalugg. Irida introduces me to Garrick upon arriving at Avalugg's legacy, who begins launching a list of questions concerning why I'm here and what my intentions are with Avalugg. He then demands a battle to prove that my might and intentions are legitimate before sending out his Frostlass and Glalie. They nearly tag team Bruno into an early retirement, who manages to hang on and retaliate with a strong style Drain Punch on Glalie. The now isolated Frostlass can't do anything before Bruno bashes her face in with a Fire Punch, earning me the victory. Having proven our might, Garrick agrees to aid us in quelling Avalugg's frenzy and informs us we'll need some eternal ice in order to make Avalugg's bombs. The only way to get said ice would be with the aid of Braviary, which means I'll need to speak to a girl named Sabi for assistance, who agrees to help if I play some hide and seek with her first. After finding the clairvoyant child atop one of the Iceland's many snow peaks, she agrees to grant me access to Snow Point Temple, where I have to solve a litany of puzzles before making my way to Sabi in the final chamber. She asks me to prove I'm strong enough to fly the open skies and pits me against her Rhyperior, Electivire, and Magmortar all at the same time. Luckily, I was clairvoyant enough to see this coming and lead with Lamarche to effortlessly energy ball the Rhyperior into oblivion. Sadly, Lamarche can't survive the joint beatdown that followed afterwards, but left the Electivire on low enough HP for Bruno to come out and Mach Punch its lights out. Magmortar failed to avenge its fallen allies, and it was subsequently used as a means for Bruno to gain back his lost HP with a strong style Drain Punch. Satisfied with our battle, Sabi then brought me to the ruins roof, where I had to gain Braviary's respect through trial by combat. I send out Gaia, who crushes the ancestral bird with a critical strong style rock slide, after which Sabi tells me to play my flute so Braviary can come to my call whenever needed. I receive the sky plate from my avian companion and can now glide down towards Avalugg's legacy to obtain a chunk of eternal ice. I give it to Garrick, who managed to scale the icy berg with his own hands before telling me to head over to the Ice Peak Arena, where he'll prepare the bombs necessary to soothe Avalugg's rage. When I get there, he and Volo are having a conversation about how dangerous the Iceland's Snowboy is before my bombs are prepared, and I march forwards to face the Titanic Lord of the Tundra. Avalugg's fight occurs in waves of 4. First you must dodge through chunks of ice it spits at you, then you have to avoid the spikes it summons from the ground. After that you need to time your rolls to avoid being skewered by Avalugg's projectiles, and finally roll through its beam before pelting it with bombs while it's recharging. Just like my battle with Electro, this fight comes down to the wire, but I managed to pull through and successfully quell the frenzy of Hisui's final noble. I received the icicle plate for all my trials and tribulations before Garrick nearly has a nervous breakdown upon realizing a child managed to conquer the abominable Avalugg. Irida manages to calm him down by stating how much of a help I've been in restoring Hisui's nobles to their rightful dignity before Adaman and Sabi come in to join the congratulations party. Adaman then states with utmost confidence that everything will be alright so long as I'm around. The next morning marks the beginning of the apocalypse, and there's no one else Commander Commodore sees fit to blame for this other than me. Thanks to all the valiant work I've done for this land, Commander Commodore elects to not execute me on the spot before telling me to leave and not return until I can prove my innocence beyond a shadow of a doubt. Unfortunately, neither the Pearl Clan or Diamond Clan can offer me aid lest they risk provoking an all-out war with the Galaxy team. Luckily, Volo swoops in to offer a helping hand and takes me to a secluded part of the woods to meet Miss Kogita. She tells me that I'll need the blessings of the 3 Lake Guardians in order to form the Red Chain and put an end to the world being torn to pieces. Volo elects to accompany me on my journey along with Irida and Adaman, although I have to decide which of the two will tag along my journey and ultimately choose Adaman since I chose Irida on my first playthrough. When we arrive at the first of the 3 lakes, Lake Verity, I hold my arc phone aloft and open the once sealed cave, where upon entering I'm confronted by an Alpha Gudra. I send in Mithra, who uses a sword stance before following up with a strong style close combat which destroys the Drippy Dragon. With Gudra gone, Mesprit reveals himself and subjects me to its trial of emotions, questioning me on my feelings and thoughts since falling from the space-time rift. Satisfied by my responses, Mesprit blesses me with one of its plumes before Volo, Adaman, and I make our way towards the second lake on our travels, Lake Valor. Once there, my arc phone once again clears away into the sealed cave as Adaman and I make our way inside, where we're accosted by an Alpha Overquill. I lead with Anakin, who takes a meaty double edge before bulldozing Overquill twice in retaliation. Now on low health, Overquill decides to risk it all with another double edge, but ends up taking itself out due to the recoil damage. Seeing the Alpha's defeat, Azelf appears and challenges me to hit it with some bombs whilst it evades my efforts. It attempts to dissuade me, but upon seeing my unwavering resolve, Azelf declares I passed the trial of willpower and blesses me with one of its fangs. There's only one more lake to go, so Adaman, Volo, and I travel to Lake Acuity, where my arc phone opens the final cave seal before we head inside and challenge the Alpha, Hisui, and Zoroark. It manages to get off the single Shadow Claw before being chewed out by a strong style crunch from Anakin. Uxie appears afterwards and issues me its Trial of Knowledge, which being a Pokemon Master is easy enough to answer, netting me the blessing of the final Lake Guardian. With the 3 blessings now in hand, Volo, Adamant, and I rush to the Shrouded Ruins atop the Mirelands, where Miss Kogita joins us in witnessing the Lake Guardians pulling their powers together and forge the Red Chain. The 3 Lake Guardians disappear before Volo clues us into a rumor he's heard concerning Commander Komodo taking a squad up to the space-time rift to strike down whatever's on the other side. I receive a small welcoming party upon returning to Jubilife Village as Professor Laventon and Akari express their joy and relief to see me still standing. They take me to Captain Celine, who's been given the title of Commander in Komodo's absence, and as Commander in charge, she orders us to head for the temple atop Mount Coronet and use the Red Chain to put an end to the current calamity. Before that, let's go over my team for what may be the final time. We have Spectre the Shiny Gengar, Gaia the Alpha Golem, Mithra the Alpha Scyther, Bruno the Machamp, Anakin the Alpha Gyarados, and Lamarche the Alakazam. As I make my way towards the temple, I'm halted by Benny, who reveals he's the guy who does the dirty work Commander Komodo doesn't have the time to, stating he won't let me pass unless I can surpass his ancient ninja techniques. He leads with Miss Magus as I send out Bruno to exploit its weak physical defense. I'm hit by an extra sensory, but manage to hang on and bring the ghost down with some consecutive fire punches. Benny then sends out his Gardevoir, who sets up with an agile-style Calm Mind before nailing Bruno with a follow-up Psychic. I toss out Anakin, who takes a stab-boosted Psychic before taking out Benny's Gardevoir with 2 Iron Heads. Next up for Benny is Gallade, who sets up with Sword Stance as Anakin attempts to stop it with a stab Aqua Tail. I fail to get the KO as Gallade retaliates with Psycho Cut, wasting my Water Serpent, before I send out Mithra to finish the job and strike through Gallade with Aerial Ace. Benny's final Pokemon is Sneasler, who makes short work of Mithra thanks to its speed and status inflictions. However, a Pokemon with a quad weakness to the Psychic type never stood a chance against me, as Lamarche flawlessly demonstrates. Benny sees the writing on the wall and allows me to move onwards and confront Commander Komodo. Adamant attempts to make him see reason, but Komodo demands a battle to prove which of our wills is stronger. He leads with Hisui and Braviary as I send Spectre out to take the bird down with a strong style Shadow Ball. Commander Komodo then sends out a Snorlax, who wastes Spectre with a high horsepower. I then bring Bruno out to batter the Doughboy with an agile style Mach Punch, which I follow up with a strong style Drain Punch, destroying the would-be wall. Commander Komodo retaliates by sending in Clefable, who buffs itself with Calm Mind before bringing Bruno down with Psychic. I toss Anakin out to avenge Bruno and trade blows with Clefable until its defense returns to normal before annihilating it with Iron Head. Commander Komodo's final Pokemon is Golem, and although it's able to pick off Anakin with Rock Slide, its quad weakness to grass allows Lamarche to come in and rock its world with Energy Ball. Having proven my superiority, Commander Komodo gets on his knees and begs me to end the calamity. I make my way to the temple summit and summon forth the Ruler of Time, Dialga, who gets weakened by the power of the Red Chain before challenging me to combat. Just like Dusclops, I'm required to catch Dialga to progress the story, which means I have to spam Pokeballs at it while it's at full health, which could take an absolute eternity. Oh. Well, what do you know? Unfortunately, the story doesn't quite end here, as Dialga's sibling Palkia descends from above, forcing an immediate retreat from the premises. Once we're at a safe enough distance away, Dialga telepathically informs Adamant that we'll need 3 specific items to contain Palkia's calamity. Luckily, we already have the first 2 items, those being the Red Chain and Pokeball, but Irida elects to bring Leon in to ascertain the location of some Origin Ore. Before we're able to mine any up, we're accosted by the Misfortune Sisters, who are willing to throw their lives away for a shot at petty revenge against each of us in the battle of a lifetime. Charm chooses me as her revenge target, as Bruno and her Rhydon trade blow for blow, with Bruno just barely coming out on top. Unfortunately for Bruno, Charm sends out her Gengar, who picks my battered brawler off with an agile-style Shadow Ball. I then send Anakin out, who devours the Grim Ghosty with a strong-style Crunch. In wake of their defeat, the 3 Misfortune Sisters elect to flee the scene, as Leon is then able to procure a Geode of Origin Ore without further delay. I bring the Origin Ore to Professor Laventon, who with the assistance of Akari back at Jubilife Village combines all 3 materials into what he dubs the Origin Ball. Sadly, I have to ditch one of my party members to bring Dialga with me so I can face Palkia, and elect to leave Anakin behind for the memes. Upon returning to the ancient temple, I call forth Dialga, who aids us in our plight by breaking through Palkia's aura with its Roar of Time, allowing me to confront the calamitous Spatial Stallion. For a final boss fight, Palkia is pretty easy. Aside from a fake out it does at the very beginning, all Palkia does is rain down meteors, which you can easily roll away from. They do leave behind a slight floor hazard, which is annoying at worst, but the only damage I took throughout the entire battle came from Palkia's surprise energy burst, which I easily acclimated to. I eventually wear the Celestial Coney down and toss my Origin Ball, catching Palkia and ending the calamity befalling Hisui. But I can't end the video quite yet, since there's still one more challenge awaiting me in the post-game. I won't bore you with the details of Volo and I's plate gathering journey, since most of it involves catching non-Cantonian Pokemon. However, I will include my rematch with Commander Comodo. He leads with Golem as I mirror match him with Gaia, who tanks an Iron Head before retaliating with an Agile style and consecutive Strong style Bulldoze. Commander Comodo then sends out his newly acquired Heracross, who sets up with Sword Stance before finishing Gaia off with an Agile style close combat. I respond by sending Mithra out to set up her own Sword Stance before cutting through Heracross with a quad effective aerial ace. Commander Comodo then brings Braviary out and annihilates Mithra with a Strong style Air Slash, leading to me sending out Anakin, who brings the bird down with 2 consecutive crunches. Next up for Comodo is Snorlax, who delivers immediate Giga Impact before tanking Anakin's crunch and finishing my fish off with a Strong style Fire Punch. This leaves the Doughboy wide open for Bruno to come out and beat him down with 2 back-to-back Drain Punches. Commander Comodo's final Pokemon is Clefable, who's able to bring Bruno down with an Agile style and consecutive use of Psychic, but falls to Spectre's dual Sludge Bomb shortly afterwards. I received the Fist Plate as a token of my victory and some insight as to how my battle with Volo will go if I don't train up my Pokemon beforehand. So while I was revisiting each of the game's areas, I did a little bit of training before catching the legendary Pokemon connected to that specific location. Naturally, this led to me finding 3 more shiny Pokemon, the first of which was this shiny Vulpix I found in the Cobalt Coastlands, which I snuck up on and caught with a surprise strike while it was fast asleep. The second was a shiny Machoke I also found in the Coastlands, which was caught about an hour after I had found the shiny Vulpix. Lastly was this full-on shiny Roselia I found while in the Coronet Highlands, which gave me some difficulty but was caught like every shiny before it. With all the plates obtained and my Pokemon trained up to level 70, let's go over my team before attempting the Volo gauntlet. We have Mithra the Alpha Scyther, Bruno the Machamp, Spectre the shiny Gengar, Lamarche the Alakazam, Anakin the Alpha Gyarados, and Padme the Clefable, who's replacing Gaia. If it wasn't obvious based on my naming conventions, I'm banking on Anakin and Padme to bring down Volo's ace in the hole, Giratina. With preparations out of the way, I make my way up the steps of the Celestica ruins and prepare to face my biggest challenge yet. Volo leads with Spiritomb as I send in Padme, who buffs herself with Calm Mind before easily shrugging off Spiritomb's Shadow Ball. Padme then unleashes a mighty Moonblast, which takes Spiritomb out as Volo sends Roserade out in response, who gets off a Poison Jab before I switch into Mithra. I buff Mithra's attack with Sword Stance before cutting the Prickly Flower down, but get taken out immediately afterwards due to Arcanine's Rock Slide. I send in Anakin to avenge Mithra and pound the puppy into the ground with 2 uses of Bulldoze. Volo then brings out his Togekiss, who hits Anakin with an Agile style and consecutive Moonblast, the latter of which crit, forcing an immediate swap into Spectre. A single Strong style Sludge Bomb takes down Togekiss, leading to Volo sending in his Lucario, who gets off 2 Bullet Punches before buffing itself with Bulk Up. Knowing how frail Spectre is, I switch into Bruno, who tanks a close combat before buffing with Bulk Up and laying into Lucario with Drain Punch. Volo's final Pokemon is Garchomp, who does some decent damage with an Agile style Slash and follow-up Dragon Claw, but Bruno easily beats it with a quad effective Ice Punch. However, the battle isn't over just yet. One more obstacle stands in my way from claiming victory. Giratina begins the battle by immediately shattering Bruno with Shadow Force, which gives it the Obscurity status, making Giratina harder to hit. I send in Spectre, who manages to get off 2 Dark Pulses before being taken out by a second Shadow Force from Giratina. I toss in Anakin to use Rest and gain back some HP and attempt to stall Giratina until it's run out of uses for its signature move. When I think it's all out, I bring out Lamarche, who misses with Dazzling Gleam thanks to Obscurity status before being taken out by Shadow Force. I then bring in Padme to use Rest and get hit with an Agile style and consecutive Earth Power from Giratina, meaning it's now out of uses for Shadow Force. I attempt to get some health back with Anakin by using Rest, but get hit with Drowsiness and subsequently taken out by Giratina's Dragon Claw. I'm able to Calm Mind with Padme on switching and take Giratina down with Moonblast, leading to its second phase, which sadly I couldn't beat. At least not on my first attempt. With a few more levels and some slightly better luck, I'm confident I'll be able to beat Volo. So I grind my team up to level 73 before giving Volo another shot. A lot of this battle stays the same, with the exception of switching in Lamarche to one-shot Volo's Roserade with a Strong style Sidekick. Of course, this leads to Lamarche being chewed up by a Strong style Crunch from Arcanine, which puts the battle back on track with my first attempt. When I make it to Giratina, Bruno gets bodied by Shadow Force, putting me in a similar position to last time, with 2 of my Pokemon being down for the count. I then began using the Rest strategy to stall out Giratina's Shadow Force with the combined efforts of Padme, Anakin, and Mithra. History unfortunately repeats itself as Anakin gets gets washed by a Shadow Force due to drowsiness proccing, with Mythra being cut down by Giratina's agile and strong style Dragon Claw combo. This left Padme with the weight of the world on her shoulders, as she was left tanking Giratina's hits until nightfall. Sadly, drowsiness eventually got the better of her, and Giratina managed to take her down with an agile and strong style Earth power. Spectre was my last Mon left, and although I was able to pick off Giratina's remaining HP with Dark Pulse, there's just no way I stand a ghost of a chance against its second form. That is, unless Giratina misses with Shadow Force, which gives Spectre the opportunity to unleash an agile and consecutive strong style Shadow Ball, securing me the victory. That battle came down to the wire, but with Volo defeated, I can confidently say I cannot beat Pokemon Legends Arceus with only Cantonian Pokemon. I had to catch both Dusclops and Dialga just to beat the main story, and to make it to Volo, I had to catch several other non-Cantonian natives. But I had a lot of fun with this challenge regardless. Just exploring the Hisui region again and playing through this game in such a unique way was a blast. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. If this video can get just 10 likes, I'll attempt a Johto only playthrough next. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see y'all next time.